Chris O'Connor here. Join the Curmudgeon Rock Report's invite-only curmudgeonly community at facebook.com/curmudgeonrock. Also look out for a Spotify playlist that pays honor to this episode.
This is the Curmudgeon Rock Report, and this is your podcast made by rock geek iconoclastic outsiders for rock geek iconoclastic outsiders. For those of you who lament that rock music has gone the way of jazz and slipped into niche genre status, we are here to keep that flame alive by providing insight, analysis, recommendations, and honest takes, not hot takes. And hey, there's a good chance you'll learn some rock history you never knew before. Back in the summer of 2018, I brought my wife and dogs with me to Florida to visit my mom, my brother, and his family. The other half of the Curmudgeon Rock Report, Curmudgeon Chris, who had just started living in Houston at the time, also swung by for a week to pay a visit. One evening, Chris and I went out to a bar near my mom's home for a few drinks. The bar was sparsely attended, which was perfect for me because not many people could then challenge my monopolizing the jukebox. One of my jukebox go-to songs is TVI, a proto-punk classic from the Stooges' 1970 album Funhouse, and I selected it. As we downed our beers, chatted, and grooved to the sermon of Iggy Pop, some guy roughly our age, a few seats down from us, noticed that I selected a bunch of songs from the bar's digital jukebox. Referring to TVI, he asked, "Hey, is that Greta Van Fleet?" For fuck's sake. How bad does someone's knowledge of rock music have to be to confuse the godfathers of punk with the world's worst Led Zeppelin imitation? That's like listening to The Clash and asking, "Hey, is that Iron Maiden?" And this brings us to the next question. Who the hell are Greta Van Fleet fans? If someone were tasked to imagine the silliest, most comedically bad Led Zeppelin parody imaginable, Greta Van Fleet would be the result. This is a band, mostly made up of brothers, that watched Spinal Tap and probably thought it was a serious documentary. Hell, I'll answer my own question. GVF fans are essentially basic normies. They're lowbrow pedestrian simpletons with basic normie tastes who have little knowledge of rock history as well as little knowledge of how much good rock music there actually is out there that is original, inventive, and artistically authentic. But I can go on and on about these annoying basic normies forever. It's more interesting and fun to go after what and who they like. And this brings us to what is, among bands that are popular and have a considerable following, arguably the worst band of the 21st century. Seriously, Greta Van Fleet are so bad, they make Creed respectable. So, let's hunker down and get our inner curmudgeon on as we tear a new asshole into this band's thankfully short discography. Welcome to our analysis as to why Greta Van Fleet are shit. And welcome to the Curmudgeon Rock Report.
Hello all and welcome back to the Curmudgeon Rock Report. And I just want to verify what Arturo talked about in our parameter setter in our opening. This actually happened, that Arturo and I snuck away from his family to go drinking at some random shithole bar in Melbourne, Florida. And Arturo loves to monopolize jukeboxes, probably still if he has a chance, and spends like $20 on the jukebox, so he has it all night. And TVI comes on, which is just awesome, just incredible piece of proto-punk. And this one dude walks up to him, so, "Dude, is that Greta Van Fleet?" Yeah, because Greta Van Fleet had just
broken big at that point.
They had just broken out, and so in the sort of the normie, non-engaged guys that don't give a shit about rock like us, this was the brand name for rock at the time, and so anything that they liked that was rock, man, maybe it was Greta Van Fleet. Yeah. So it just shows you, and this was in 2018, and things ain't got much better since then. Obviously, we have bands like Geese and Laurel Canyon, and so there is a little bit of hope for rock. But Greta Van Fleet, yucky poo, baby. Yucky poo shit.
Yeah, and we're going to go specifically into why they suck. And
Yeah,
probably
absolutely.
why their fans suck too.
Yeah. And so, yeah, with that as a preview, let's now talk about some good music. But to do that, we need to get in our spacesuits, get in the rocket, hit hypersonic speed, and split open the space-time continuum so that we can therefore enter the parallel universe, which is a wonderful place where rock and roll is still predominant. It is still the music that all the kids go gaga for. They spend all their time on TikTok. Let's just put it this way. Every video is set to Fleetwood Mac's Dreams in the parallel universe. And rock is good, and it's still on the billboards, and it still fills arenas and stadiums. Oasis never broke up, and so they can still fill stadiums anytime they want. Bands in their 20s can fill stadiums in the parallel universe. This is a kind of a weird poetic way of saying that this is the segment where we cover new and newish artists and newish albums by those artists that we think that you would dig and that you should check out. And in this edition, we have an album and a single and female-powered segment.
Yes.
Arturo, who are you talking about?
Yes, late last year, the Los Angeles-based post-punk / indie pop trio Automatic released their third album, Is It Now? For those of you who aren't familiar with them, a general description would be as follows. Imagine the icy, gloomy, yet groovy soundscapes of Joy Division merging head-on with the dark, yet hook-filled synth pop of Depeche Mode in their late 1980s, early 1990s peak. In their first two albums, both of them very good, mind you, the rhythm section, bassist Hallie Saxon and drummer Lola Dompey, did their best to make themselves sound like a purely electronic rhythm section, especially with Dompey having her drums processed and treated to the point that they sounded like a concoction from a software program like Rock Band. What's immediately notable when listening to this album is that there's a lively looseness and a swing to the band's rhythms now. They no longer sound electronic. Dompey's drums don't sound like a drum machine anymore, and there are lots of drum fills and syncopation that let her skills shine, as well as highlight Saxon's supple bass lines. This is especially evident in the title track. Of course, none of this would matter if the songs weren't any good. Fortunately, the ladies in Automatic have retained their knack for tight yet fluid, highly melodic and memorable pop songs. Keyboardist and synthesizer whiz and lead singer Izzy Glaudini still imbues the tracks with a smoky coolness factor thanks to her alluringly deadpan vocal delivery. They even break new ground for themselves with sound and song structure, especially in the record's second half. Don't Wanna Dance, essentially a hypnotic drums and bass groove where Dompey's drums pound out an elliptical beat while Glaudini's synths just produce minimalist noises in the background. Smog Summer is as good a piece of pulsating electropop as you're going to hear this year, while Playboy, with an I, not a Y, is feminist agate prop embedded in some seriously sexy synth funk, enlivened by the newfound swing and looseness of the Saxon Dompey rhythm section. The album closes with Terminal, a manic rocker sung in Arabic lyrics that oddly brings to mind the OC's guitarless space punk from earlier this decade. There's a streak of songs in the album's first half where nursery rhyme melodies sink the tracks down to the level of children's music, and that's why I give this record 3.5 stars out of 5 rather than 4. But it's nevertheless a recommended listen and an interesting step in the evolution of one of the coolest U.S. bands of the moment. Chris?
Yeah, I like this album a lot. Really clever stuff here that's grown on me in the few times that I've listened to it so far. Who says that synth pop is played out? This is actually a life-filled synth pop record that is not purely derivative. And they write really good songs, and the vocals have that etherealness that it's clever, but they're saying things. They're actually meaningful. And so it's actually really neat. And I do the idea of the loose live drum and bass juxtaposed against the ethereal vocal and all the synths here. I think, like you said, Depeche Mode and Joy Division are a really good call. But this is looser. And I made a comment to Art before we came on the air that they remind me of this old band in the 90s that Matt Sharp from Weezer started when he left Weezer.
Well, it was in between Weezer albums.
Yeah, essentially, it came out around the same time as Pinkerton, so it's one of those things.
A year before.
Yeah, but the Rentals, and it had this sort of laid back irony that they traded in, and some of these songs remind me of that vibe. Like I said, "Lazy" is the primary single off this record. That's really cool. The title track is really fun. And then, like you said, some of that stuff in the "Don't Wanna Dance," Playboy, some of that stuff in the second half, also very strong. So I hope they do more of this. I like this direction for this band. This sort of, it's not quite minimalism, but it has this sort of this smooth, catchy, kind of groovy vibe to it that really sneaks up onto you. And it's almost like a hypnosis effect.
Yeah.
That it draws you in and it reveals its charms over multiple listens. So, yeah, definitely check this band out and this album out. Is It Now by Automatic? Really, really good stuff. And
your choice, Chris.
Yes, my choice. We're sticking with female-oriented electropop, actually. And this woman, I liked her 2022 record. We're talking about there's a woman named Grace Ives, a young woman in her 20s. Grace Ives is a Brooklyn-based singer-songwriter and a DIY crafter of experimental pop. Ives, the child of parents who work in the arts, is a curious sort who sure loves to twist knobs and program drum machines and make warbles and drones and bright keys and to run her voice through echo filters. Sometimes her experiments work really well. I placed Ives' 22 record, Janky Star, in my list of the 20 best albums of that year. I thought that album was charming and pretty while also being edgy and confessional, and the drum programming and the vocals there I thought were really fun and hooky throughout. Now let's skip ahead a few years, and Ives is still just as experimental, but apparently she was not content to stick what worked so well back then, because the results this time out, not so great. On her 2026 album, Girlfriend, the drums are needlessly houseier, as if she wants to embrace Detroit techno, and the arrangements are a lot noisier, and in some spots she's just plain weird, and the pretty unabashedly gurgly vocals are gone, replaced mostly by reverb moping and awkwardly dull melodies. So why the hell am I talking about her? Because then we get to the end of this record. It's a 10-song record. It's really awkward and not so great for 9 songs. And then you get to the very end of this yucky album, and holy hell, Grace Ives gets it absolutely positively right just once and right in time. And it's phenomenal. That last song is the anthemic Stupid Bitches, which is a very evocative title, but Stupid Bitches. Truly, we have one of the best electro-pop bangers of the past few years. The song finds Ives emerging from a depression or an otherwise bad streak in her life and declaring herself triumphant over her haters. And she does it by crafting a delectably loud thunderclap of a drum machine accompaniment and swirling strings and keyboard loops that sneak into her mix. Ives' vocals and her melody here are engaging and rousing and pretty darn sexy as she segues from a soulful, sensual verse to a rocked-out chorus driven by a monster of a fuzzy electronic bass riff. So essentially, the whole album is Ives straining and misstepping and dusting herself off and earnestly trying again, but missing badly until she lands on something that launches her into the nastiest, most bleeding edge of pop music in the 2020s. So yeah, skip Ives' otherwise messy and at times horrific Girlfriend and skip along straight to the end to Stupid Bitches. Don't be surprised if this finds its way into dance halls and nightclubs and DJ sets all over America over the next few years. Strong one-off stuff here in the spring of 2026 from Grace Ives. What do you say, Art?
If this song is the one saving grace of an otherwise pretty crappy album, I'm so glad I did not hear the rest of that album. I only heard this song, and even then, this song doesn't do it for me. The production is good.
Yeah.
It's got a nice, clean, clear sound. It's well produced.
I love that drum clap that it's built on.
I just don't think it's a good song. I just don't like the melody. I don't like the chorus. I don't like the verses. I don't like her voice. I never thought she was much of a singer. If this song's about her telling to fuck off to all her haters, I guess she's telling me to fuck off because I'm really a fan of her music and never have been. So well-produced crap is what I would call this.
Yeah, that's most of the rest of the record. The record sounds great. She really is quite a talent in terms of her ability to program drum machines and experiment with sounds and to try some things. It just doesn't work until this song. Like I said, it's got that like soulful, slinky, almost Madonna-like pop in the verses. And then the chorus is like this sort of industrial rock, almost like like techno rock, or what would you say? It's almost like industrial metal. In the way she gets it, that monster fuzz bass riff, like I said. Right. So it's just really inventive and really engaging, and I like it. Like I said, I guess it could be called industrial house soul. Chris here again. We usually end our episodes by inviting you to join our Curmudgeonly community page on Facebook. Well, we're picking up our efforts there. Know people just as passionate as us about rock and roll? Invite them to join in the fun. You don't actually need our permission to do so. Also, expect to see a lot more content up there moving forward. Our mission is to engage you, so darn it, we'll engage you like a fire hose, or maybe like a firehouse if we're going to give love to Gene Simmons. We may also be making a few offers. Want to wear a t-shirt featuring our logo? You may have that opportunity soon. So be a fellow curmudgeon, help us expand our little community, and share your own musings via your own posts. We're at facebook.com/groups/curmudgeonrock. Let's talk about Greta Van Fleet now. We all know that old saying that imitation is the best form of flattery. But when we live in a world dominated by social media and viral video and rampant look-at-meism, sometimes imitation can be tragically mistaken for true creativity, especially when it has been such a long time that anyone has delivered such a competent imitation of something beloved. To me, that is what really drove the success of Greta Van Fleet back in 2017 and 2018 when they broke. They served up early 70s clones at a time when people were both desperate for something new that they could enjoy and had also started to lose their ability to discern and appreciate real, true originality. Yes, by the late 10s, the internet had made a whole lot of fucking people lazy and desensitized to matters of taste. Damn shame, really, because now you and I have to suffer through this bullshit as a public service to all our rock geek iconoclasts out there to help them keep off this grass. Right, Arturo?
Yes. When we start talking about their albums and EPs. So let's start with the origin story. Michigan is a state renowned for its great rock and roll tradition. The Stooges, the MC5, Bob Seger, Mick Collins. Alice Cooper was originally from Arizona, then did a little bit in Detroit, and they went to LA.
They emigrated to Detroit, but they were part of that scene.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mick Collins and his bands, the Gories and the Dirt Bombs, and the White Stripes, all hailed from or near Detroit. The entire Motown record label and all their great names, Stevie Wonder, Marvin Gaye, The Temptations, Diana Ross and the Supremes, Gladys Knight and the Pips, Smokey Robinson and the Miracles, etc., originated in Detroit.
So did George Clinton.
I was about to say that. Aretha Franklin was from Detroit. George Clinton is originally from New Jersey, but his entire Parliament Funkadelic empire was based in Detroit. Eminem, one of the greatest rappers of all time, is also from Detroit. Sadly, Kid Rock and Ted Nugent are also from Detroit. So I guess it's keeping in line with the crap side of Michigan's musical tradition that my pick for the worst big-name band of the 21st century also comes from Michigan, namely the small town of Frankenmuth, not far from Saginaw. Twin brothers Josh and Jake Kiska and their younger brother Sam formed Greta Van Fleet in 2012 with childhood friend Kyle Hulk shortly joining them on drums. With Josh on vocals, Jake on guitar, and Sam on bass, they immediately cut the form of the classic rock quartet. They got their name when Hawk, overheard a relative talk about a Frankenmuth native by the name of Greta Van Fleet. They slightly altered the first name, and thus the band's name was born. I'd like to think that their name is an in-around reference to the legendary 1970s British prog rock band Van der Graaf Generator, but considering the awfulness of these guys' music and their musical taste, there's no chance they're that cool. They were recording demo songs as early as 2013, and they must have gotten a well-connected agent or manager soon afterward, because they released a live EP in early 2014 that garnered some industry buzz. Later that year, their song Standing On was featured in commercials for the Chevy Equinox in the Detroit area. Their next stroke of licensing and networking luck came in 2016 when the band actually appeared in an episode of the Showtime series Shameless, performing the song Highway Tune. They signed on to the record label Republic Records, a subsidiary of Universal Music Group. The recorded version of Highway Tune started streaming on iTunes in early 2017 and eventually hit other streaming services. Republic released their debut EP Black Smoke Rising in April 2017, and from then on, they've been a mainstay on whatever constitutes now as modern rock radio, as well as algorithm-driven modern rock playlists across all streaming services. Chris, how the hell did this doggerel band get so lucky and so connected so quickly?
I can't speak to the connected part, but I will say this. One, it figures that they stole the name of a neighbor to name the band, because that's what they do. They steal. But here's the thing. Their respect and reverence for Led Zeppelin, and in some ways Deep Purple, and 1970 to 72 classic rock, and that kind of boogie-woogie British swinging rock is admirable. They do a really good job of studying it and putting it together and parsing that out. And this is something that, again, I think that they were doing that at a time when people were longing for, hey, you remember Led Zeppelin?
Yeah.
And you ever wonder why, you ever look around and notice that rock and roll really sucks here in 2016 and 2017? All we have is fucking Coldplay. We want somebody to believe in. And so along comes, and the Jacob Kiska, the guitar player, it's Jacob.
Yeah.
He admits that he studied Jimmy Page astutely, and he actually does a really good job, a really good impression of Page as far as guitar tone and his playing style. And again, so that's really what was in demand. People wanted that retro sound. And so they were willing to embrace this band. The problem is that, like a lot of imitations, they were an empty suit. But I think you got to admit, by 2017, TikTok hadn't broken out big, but Twitter was big, Facebook was big. It was social media addiction and obsession that had basically swung the 2016 election to Donald Trump, right?
Yeah.
And so people are living their lives online. And why wouldn't, something like this pass for something marvelous? So that's my take on that. They were obsessed with the right things at the right time because everything was so shitty. And at least you could enjoy it and not think too hard.
Yeah, pretty much. It's that's a simplistic way of explaining it, but it's accurate. And I'll expand on this more when we get to the last album they did, expanding on the point you made there. But we're going to get there very soon. Thankfully, they don't have a very big discography. Let's start with their first two EPs. I'll talk about them back to back because they came out the same year, and the same 4 songs from the first EP are in the second EP with extra songs. It's weird. I don't know. It's a weird setup they made, but let's get into it. First, all right. So the EP, the first one, Black Smoke Rising from 2017. When you hear the first single, Highway Tune, you realize it isn't just third-rate Led Zeppelin. Listen carefully, and unbelievably, it's second-rate Wolfmother. Seriously, for those who don't know Wolfmother, they're the Australian hard rock band who had mild success in the mid to late noughties. It's Wolfmother without the ironic charm and cheeky humor. At this point, Greta Van Fleet come off like a band that thinks Led Zeppelin is a band that only they've recently discovered.
Yep.
It doesn't get better with Safari Song, a song that sounds like an AI chatbot was given written instructions as to what Led Zeppelin sounds like, and this is what the bot produced. Can Josh Kiska sing in any other voice where he isn't blatantly copying Robert Plant? Fucking pathetic. All right, the other EP, From the Fires. Like I said earlier, this EP takes the terrible 4 songs that comprise the previous EP and shamelessly reinstates them on this EP with 4 other terrible third-rate Zeppelin-sounding showers of shit, and 2 of them are cover songs. This is the band ripping off their audience saying, "Hey everyone, did you like our first EP? Here's our new EP with the same songs as the last EP." As far as the covers are concerned, if someone told you that Greta Van Fleet are doing a Sam Cooke song, you'd say, yeah, that's like the B-52s covering Tom Petty. But that's exactly what they do here, and predictably enough, it sounds like a terrible, low-rate bar band that usually plays Zeppelin songs on Friday nights, drunkenly stumbling through a Sam Cooke song sung by the worst Robert Plant impersonator imaginable. If the civil rights movement didn't die in the 1980s under Reagan, it certainly did when Greta Van Fleet murdered this song. And then there's their version of Fairport Convention's Meet on the Ledge by the legendary 1960s British folk rock band Fairport Convention, a group that counted the great Richard Thompson and Sandy Denny as its members. In Greta Van Fleet's overwrought hands, a soaring ballad about love and devotion becomes actually truer to the literal song title, a song that makes you want to kill yourself. Chris?
Jeez. Yeah, this is the best thing that this band ever did. Why? Because it's the most blatant homage to Led Zeppelin. And at least Joshua Kiska here at least attempts to sing for real. And so it's not just the screamy part of Plant. He actually tries to do like the real, like ballady singing voice as well. So at least there's that. You know, that became a problem on the 3 albums after this. But the melodies are dull and lifeless, and the musical ideas are just willfully dopey. These kids were sincere, but it was just like, they didn't have too much money in the intellectual and talent bank, for sure. And yeah, that cover of A Change Is Gonna Come is just atrociously offensive. It's basically an American Idol audition tape. For like years on these competition shows like American Idol and The Voice, white guys especially, and sometimes black men, but white guys especially have taken this song on to say, hey, I can sing soul too. And this is the song that shows that I have soul pipes. And essentially that's what Kiska is going for. Newsflash, he doesn't have soul pipes. So it's just an offensive desecration of a bona fide civil rights era anthem. And like I said, Highway Tune basically rips off all of classic rock, not just Zeppelin, but Nazareth, Deep Purple, Heart. It's like generic music made for the mall or for Mickey D's the Mickey D's PA system, really. And a few other things. Flower Power is genuinely hilarious because basically these are those kids saying, I really love Your Time Is Gonna Come from Zeppelin, and I really love Hey, What Can I Do? And I really love Tangerine. Why don't we let's try to cover all 3 songs at the same time. It's pretty amusing that their rock and roll vocabulary seems to start and end at Led Zeppelin 3 and that album's outtakes. And so one other thing to discuss about this piece of shit. This album, the combined EPs, you consider them an album, won the Grammy in 2018, covering the 2017 cycle, but won the Grammy for Best Rock Album. Now, let's talk about this Best Rock Album category. This is pretty horrifying. The history of the Best Rock Album Grammy, it goes back to 1995, covering 1994. The first winner was Voodoo Lounge by the Rolling Stones.
That's actually not a bad album. It's the last decent Stones album.
There are a few albums here that have won this thing that are actually pretty good albums. But here, let's do a kind of a rundown of the bands that have won this Grammy. You've got 2 Rolling Stones records, including the one they did in 24. You've got 2 Sheryl Crow records. You've got 2 Green Day records. American Idiot is good. The other one, not so much. You've got a Led Zeppelin album called Celebration Day. That came out in 2013. Must be a live album. but that came out. Beck's Morning Phase, which is one of his worst albums. 2 not so great Muse records from late in the latter part of their run so far. 2 Cage the Elephant albums.
Ugh.
A John Fogerty record from 1997. A Strokes album from 2020.
God, that album's awful. That's the worst thing they ever did.
Yeah. An Ozzy Osbourne record from 2022.
Good Lord.
A Paramore record from 2023. And 5 Foo Fighters records that have won the Best Rock Album Grammy. Now, there are 3 winners of that I actually consider to be great albums. Jagged Little Pill by Alanis Morissette, The Rising by Bruce Springsteen, and A Deeper Understanding by The War on Drugs. Now, I say all of this, I give the roll call of the winners of what basically might as well just be, you just call it the Grammy Normie Award. This is the Normie Award.
It's basically, the Grammys have always been a popularity contest. It's just what's most popular.
It's like lowest common denominator.
It's not quality. It's the lowest common denominator, popularity. That's all it is.
And even among this list, Greta Van Fleet's From the Fires is the worst album among these 33 winners.
I don't know. That 2020 Strokes album is pretty bad.
Yeah, the last Turnstile record won this, and that wasn't that great. But this is the worst album of the whole bunch. And so they are the worst normie of the normiest.
On this episode, we delved into the shower of shit that is the music of Greta Van Fleet. For our next episode, we're going to cleanse our palates and delve into the glorious music of one of the 20th century's greatest rock auteurs, Van Morrison. Since 1967, his discography has swollen to 48 albums, continuing into this very year. Various artists throughout the years have tried to blend blues, country, folk, jazz, R&B, and soul in their own way. However, very few, if any, have done so with Morrison's vision, originality, emotional depth, and more importantly, startlingly brilliant songwriting. His run of albums from 1968 to 74 is one that most people, meaning critics, fans, and fellow musical artists, agree to be his greatest and most influential. And it's about time that this podcast gives some love to the great man's great work. Join us next time as the Curmudgeon Rock Report brings you Van Morrison, 1968 to 74, A Legacy. We slog on. Next, Anthem of the Peaceful Army from 2018. Their debut album is nothing more than a full-length extension of the dreadful Zeppelin pastiche that basic normies with poor taste fell for with the first 2 EPs. When the Curtain Calls aims to be a commentary on the shallowness of Hollywood celebrity, but it rings unironically hollow when played by an inauthentic, talentless, superficial Zeppelin covers band. And, if you watch the video, a guy who tries to sound like Robert Plant but only looks like Plant if you transported young Robert Plant to the early 1980s San Francisco club scene and gave him a gay makeover. You're the One is a southern rockish ballad that comes close to being a good song but is, as always, done in by Josh Kiska's tacky vocals and 8th grade level lyrics. Lover Lever sounds like a band of mentally challenged people who somehow got trained to play instruments to do a clumsy version of Led Zeppelin's Bring It On Home. God, this band fucking sucks. Chris?
Yeah, I will say this. This album is bluesier. I'll give it that, but not in a great way, because this starts what became a trend throughout their album. They became the best purveyors of the boring ass 5-minute song.
Yeah, definitely.
Their shit is so boring and insufferably self-important. And this is, like I said, it goes on and on. Yeah, like You're the One. This album is hilarious in the sense that Kiska, from this album on, like he had some nuance on the EPs, but here he decides that he's appropriating only the screamy part of Led Zeppelin, the screamy part of Robert Plant. Yeah. And so with the exception of the first verse, from the second verse on, You're the One is supposed to be their kind of acoustic, like groovy, hey, I love you chick ballad. and he's screaming it instead of singing it. It's this ridiculous yelp. It's like, why are you screaming? Why? It's just a really weird choice. Like I said, I'll give it to Kiska, Jake Kiska. He does have a couple of killer guitar solos on this, which if they were in better songs would matter, but they're completely wasted here. And then finally, just hammering home my point about the boringness of and how their songs seem to go on forever and not in a good way. They have two versions of that song, Lover Lever, on this album. They have a short version, which is 3.5 minutes, but feels like it goes on for 12. Just a really painful experience. And then there's a 6-minute long version that ends the album, which after a half hour of torture, I finally had to turn off. This last verse even has weird echoey speak-sing crap buried in a comically bad attempt at a psychedelic rock mix. It's just atrocious. And like I said, the vocals here are just utterly silly. But at least it's not conceptual, which is where let's just put it this way, and I'll set this up. They took the criticism that they were a Zeppelin ripoff to heart and really tried their best to not do that again in this next album. Whoops.
Yeah, but Zeppelin still permeates nevertheless. And that album we're talking about is The Battle at Garden's Gate from 2021. They hinted at Southern rock with their full-length debut album, and for their follow-up album, they go head-on into it with My Way Soon. The problem is that the lyrics are awkward and inane, and the song itself has nothing redeemable about it. Not a memorable riff, hook, melody, nothing. Age of Machine goes for a commentary about how technology dehumanizes people, but it instead comes across like Creed trying to merge with gospel, with a bad Robert Plant impersonator on vocals. Heat Above, surprise, surprise, tries to recreate the intro to Led Zeppelin's Your Time Is Gonna Come, and then launches into early 1970s Yes, but without the sense of invention and musical chops. Not that those chops would do this lousy band any good. Chris?
Yeah, all hail the most annoying product in all of rock and roll, the incredibly well-produced Awful album. Greg Kurstin is the guy who produced this album. He had produced a couple of Foo Fighters records and was really an ace pro on the boards. He got a really good, like the drum sound on this record is tremendous. And he does a good job of crafting this mix. And there's lots of space to be had. And I actually like My Way Soon. I think My Way Soon is like the only song that they have that counts as good. It actually has this kind of groovy, controlled poppiness to it. And so there's that. But then you get into a nonstop string of really bad attempts at long, dull, and horribly misguided prog rock. Where, like you said, Age of Machine, where we're going to be like Radiohead now, and this technology, and just stuff like that. And so there's a lot of that kind of thing. And the Battle at Garden's Gate is a biblical reference. And so they're trying to be we're artistes now. Again, I think they took the criticism of ripping off Led Zeppelin to heart. Zeppelin still permeates it because he's still doing that bad, screamy impression of Plant. And the dude still plays like Page. But now there's strings, now there's pianos, now there's overdubs, and there's all that. But most of it is just, again, it's dull, insipid, corny, and tuneless. Exhibit A is Age of Machine, which is just a self-serious slow burn that goes on for about 23 minutes?
It feels like it, yeah.
Yeah, but they're going for drama, but instead they give us unintentional comedy. Speaking of unintentional comedy, I wanted to share this. This is an interview excerpt from a piece by actually a really good writer named Jim Farber, who worked for the New York Daily News for a long time as their critic. And so he did an interview with Joshua Kiska.
Kiska. Yeah.
Kiska. Yeah, for The Guardian, the British newspaper. And get a load of this. This is really funny. Okay, so, quote, their debut album earned them no fewer than 4 Grammy nominations, including Best New Artist, with a win for Best Rock Album. For the new set, Kiska said they, quote, wanted to do something on a bigger scale, a notable goal for a band already prone towards gigantism. Quote, with the first album, we had the preface and the thesis. This is more of the body of the work, Kiska said. At the same time, The album continues the lyrical bent of their debut. The title of both sets employ war imagery. Quote, we thought that would be a good through line because war has been here since the advent of man, Kishka said. There's always conflict, from wars of religion to wars of industry. Whoa.
Wars of what?
Industry.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And then, so it goes on. The lyrics the band write don't address lover relationships, aiming instead for headier stuff. Quote, I wasn't turned on by the cliche, love you, baby, I want to be yours kind of thing, the singer said. Quote, I want people to lean into things that are challenging. He believes the philosophical focus of the words suits the music's grandiosity. It's theatrical, he said. That's the rock and roll spirit. The fact that some consider the result bombastic does not faze Kishka. I can get on board with that, he said. Certainly, he has in his approach to singing, which can make Freddie Mercury seem like an introvert. Quote, it just felt natural for me to do something acrobatic with my voice, Kishka said. I wanted to hang from the rafters. End quote. Sheesh. Yeah. What a dumb guy.
I mean, he doesn't come across very smart, but he's sincere.
He's honest. He's honest. He wanted to hang from the rafters. I don't know. This album is so bad. Maybe he should have hung from his neck.
This brings us... Yes.
Sorry, dude. That was mean.
It's all right. With all the shit we've said so far in this episode, whatever, dude. And this leads us to the most recent album that they made, Starcatcher from 2023. At this point, we start to wonder, who the hell are Greta Van Fleet fans? I know I earlier alluded to them being lowbrow, pedestrian, simpleton, basic normies. And while I still stand by that, there's something deeper and more specific going on. On one hand, GVF, Greta Van Fleet, fans consist of a bunch of old-timers, Gen X and older, Gen X and boomers, who love it when modern bands / artists recreate rock music of the 1970s. Yep. And in that way, they can say, hey, I'm hip, I'm current, I listen to Greta Van Fleet. When the fact is that these old-timers, their actual music tastes and ability to have an open mind to new and different kinds of music ended when they hit their 30s. On the other hand, Greta Van Fleet fans also consist of younger generation rock music fans, late period millennial and Gen Zers, who don't like a lot of modern pop or rock music, and they don't identify with it, and long to have their own version of Led Zeppelin, so they can say, hey, our generation did something musically important. Unfortunately, they've hitched their wagon to the most derivative, unoriginal, comically horrible parody of a 1970s hard rock band that doesn't realize they're a parody. As for this album itself, lead single Meeting the Master is classic, bucolic, mystic folk rock Zeppelin circa 1970s Led Zeppelin 3 meets Grand Funk Railroad, and it's almost a good song that's ruined by the atrocious vocal histrionics of their obnoxious lead singer and its ham-fisted Christian message. The Falling Sky is another interchangeable Zeppelin facsimile with balls trapped in bear trap vocals. In fact, that's this whole record. In fact, that's mostly this truly terrible band's entire discography. Chris?
Yeah, basically, they must have thought that their last album was overproduced because they go back to raw and more purely guitar-driven here. Never fear, though, their attempt at being serious artistes that aren't Led Zeppelin ripoffs were really not those guys continues here. But that, of course, means they go down an even weirder, stupider rabbit hole of self-serious theatrical rock. Like, the biggest Led Zeppelin ripoff here is they literally take the drum sound from When the Levee Breaks and slap it on to Sacred the Thread, which is just a stupid song. This is another one of these holy war songs that they were big fans of by then. Just really stupid. And then The Falling Sky, where there's a whole lot of obnoxious yelling and guitar noise, and hey, even a harmonica. But here again, they proved that they wouldn't know a good melody if it hit it in the ass. So we get Kishka growling into space with no emotional effect whatsoever. I like the idea of Runaway Blues, like a minute 20 long banger, but it's not a banger, and it's a short little hard-driving metal nugget that goes nowhere, and it goes to the cliche of, isn't it cool that we're going to see the bright lights? We're running away, man. It's just really stupid. And then you talk about meeting the master, and it's a song about God that's so shallow and dopey that it makes me not want to meet God at all. And you know me, I'm a fan of God. God is my homeboy. But man, yeah, after meeting the master, I'm like, boy, he just sounds like a fucking tool in the mouths of this Kishat kid. And oddly, this song to me sounds like a mashup of the Marshall Tucker Band and Triumph. Yeah, I'm not kidding. I hear Can't You See? They clipped a little bit of that riff from Marshall Tucker, and they clip I'm Young, I'm Wild, and I'm Free by Triumph, which is basically the corniest pop metal song ever made. So two simpleton classic rock tastes that don't go well together. and the voice, like you said, the voice on this song, pure nails on a chalkboard. Sounds like he's in some serious pain rather than spiritual ecstasy. At least Jacob does another great impression of Jimmy Page on the solo. So even though they're raw here, they still do sound great. These two albums are produced well, and that makes the boringness really unforgivable. Because can't you do better? Can't you try harder? You're hiring good studio pros. Make their efforts mean something, guys. And finally, I just wanted to loop it back around to a comment that you made. One of the more positive effects that I suspect that Greta Van Fleet may have had over the last 10 years with young people, teenagers and early 20s, is they express a love for a few of their songs, and somebody says, dude, they're ripping off Led Zeppelin, and they're like, who's Led Zeppelin? And they're like, listen to this album, and they go and discover Led Zeppelin and say, holy shit.
Yeah, this is way better.
Yeah, and then they come back and say, yeah, these guys suck. Yeah, and so it's probably been like a cyclical journey for some of these folks. So it turns out Greta Van Fleet is the ultimate gateway band for Led Zeppelin.
Yeah,
ironically enough,
they're one good contribution to music culture.
Yeah, absolutely.
And with that, we are done shitting on Greta Van Fleet.
Yes. Now we need. I'm going to go through a whole roll of toilet paper now, and I'll probably have to puke at the end of this album. But we wanted to celebrate the shittiness of it. We're doing a public service. We're telling you exactly why you should stay away from this band if you're at least at all curious. And Art, here's a challenge. Name 5 great rock bands that people should check out that aren't Greta Van Fleet. And so let's do a public service and just name 5 albums that have come out in the last 10 years that you feel everyone should listen to and make standard issue.
Oh, I don't know. Any of the first 2 Mets albums, anything Ty Segall did in the 2010s. Shit, I don't know. Like I could think of some more. I really like that Laurel Canyon album from a few years ago.
Yeah, Lucifer on the Sofa by Spoon.
But they're an older band. They're
not really that young. The 2 Geese records that I love.
Yeah, the last 2 Geese records are really good. Yeah, so anything by Slayford Mods in the 2010s.
Yeah,
I'm a big fan of theirs.
Yeah, and like I said,
that's not really rock. That's more like electro funk, electro pop, hip hop. Punk, electro clash, whatever.
Yeah, exactly. But the point being is that there are some great rock albums worth checking out. Courtney Barnett,
yes,
from 2015.
Kurt Weill. We're gonna in a couple of months we're gonna do an entire episode around Kurt Weill.
Okay, yeah. So those are some good names, folks, and check all those folks out and avoid the Greta Van Fleet trap.
And one thing before we end, I want to give a mea culpa. The previous episode, I reviewed the newest album by Salt, the British R&B soul funk group, and I mentioned that the 2 main members, Inflo, the producer, and the singer, Cleo Sol, they were a married couple, and Inflo is British, and I mentioned that Cleo Sol was American. No, she's not. She's British. In case Inflo and Cleo are listening, my apologies. You're both
in the
UK. Yes.
Hey, man, it's my job on this podcast to fuck up the facts. You got to stay in your lane. So anyway, thank you for the mea culpa. And with that, folks, as we always do at the end of these episodes, come join us on Facebook. We have a fabulous Curmudgeonly community page that we run up there that I actually contributed to. I rarely post these days, but I posted some Geese stuff up there because I'm in love with that band. And Arturo keeps us in really cool and really fun videos. I'm sure he had fun this week. He posted everything but Greta Van Fleet this week. He even posted Black Sabbath. So he did a public service for everybody in the community. So if you want to join, it's invite only, but chances are we'll let you in. Go to facebook.com/groups/curmudgeonrock. Do you love Greta Van Fleet and think that we've been terribly unfair to your favorite band? Send us some mail in defense of this band, and we'll take you seriously. We're always curious. Send that to curmudgeonrock@gmail.com. And then finally, I'm going to put together a Spotify playlist. I'll probably put a couple Automatic songs on it. I'll probably put the Grace Ives song on it. And then I'll try my hardest not to put too much Greta Van Fleet on it. But we need a playlist. We need an Exhibit A for the magnificent terribleness of this band. And that'll be our Spotify playlist. You can catch that at Stitcher or Apple or wherever you get your podcasts. It'll be in the episode descriptions. Look for the link. And with that, folks, dig everything else but Greta Van Fleet. But always, in general, dig it.